Dear friends, you are watching Civil Engineering Lecture Series, and in today's video, the subject which is discussed is Irrigation Engineering. It's presented by Engineer Ali Ahmed Mirjat. So, before going to the irrigation and its types, we first need to understand the irrigation. Irrigation is a process of artificially supplying water to the soil for raising crops, and it is science of planning and designing efficient storages and low cost water distribution systems and the power generation by constructing canals, dams, and reservoirs. It also contains a design of river control, drainage of waterlogged areas, and the generation of power, that is the hydroelectric power. So the irrigation is a artificial way process of supplying water to the fields, to the agricultural lands, for the purpose of growing the crops. The irrigation has two types mainly: flow irrigation and the lift irrigation. First, we would like to discuss flow irrigation. The flow irrigation is the flow of water through the forces of gravity. It is as the water level is at such place that it flows by the gravity. No artificial means of or mechanical means are required for flowing the water. The flows by the gravity, then we call it flow irrigation. Lift irrigation is that branch of irrigation engineering where to flow the water, artificial and mechanical means are used. The flow irrigation is the irrigation where the water flows by the gravity and it is at such level that we do not require any means of flowing the water, while in lift irrigation water is at a such level that it cannot flow to the fields, to the areas, to the lands to be cultivated, or to the lands where the crop is raised or grown. So, to provide water to the land, we lift the water from underground subsoil to provide water to the crop. First, we will discuss the flow irrigation. You can see in the picture, it's very clear that no mechanical or artificial means are required to provide water to the crops, but it is the flow by the gravity. We first have discussed in the start of this lecture that the irrigation is process of artificially supplying water to the soil, while in the flow irrigation there are no artificial means. This is not what you perceive. This is also manly constructed canal, but the flow is natural. Flow is by the gravity, but we guide the flow. It is not the flow that unguided it is, but the flow is guided. So we guide it, we uh, bring it to the fields where we grow the plants, where we grow the crops. So this is artificially supplying. The resources are used there, but the means of flowing are not mechanical. That's why we call it flow irrigation. Means are not the mechanical. While in lift irrigation, the means of flow or means of bringing the water to the field is mechanical. Mechanical. Flow irrigation contains the perennial irrigation and inundation irrigation. The perennial irrigation is the irrigation where the water flows throughout the year or throughout the crop period. While in inundation, it is not provided throughout the year. Perennial, you see in this that perennial is the flow of water to the crop throughout the year. Means the flow is throughout the year. For such system, the storage headworks such as dam and storage weirs or barrages are required and to store excessive water during floods and release it to the crops when it's required. Otherwise, in perennial irrigation, uh, there are the canals constructed, and through those canals, the waters flows to the required fields. While in inundation, water is supplied by flooding the area, and that flooding is deflooding, where the land is saturated, and the land or the soil which is to be cultivated is saturated through deflooding. That this is, you can see in the picture. In addition, the areas or the soil or the land or the field is flooded artificially. That flooding is the deflooding, and then the water is drained off, and before cultivating, the water is drained off, and then the cultivation is done. Flow irrigation contains three types of the irrigations: the direct irrigation, which we also call perennial irrigation; storage, which is indirect irrigation, which is the storage irrigation, we call it non-perennial irrigation; while the third is the combined irrigation. The combined irrigation contains the direct irrigation and the storage irrigation. This is the direct irrigation with the, which is the perennial irrigation, in which the irrigation is done in directly, and it is directly diverted to the canal without attempting to the store to store the water. As in done in the storage, what happens in storage, which is the storage, water is stored, while in direct the water is not stored. For such system, a low diversion weir or diversion barrage is constructed across the river. That's necessary. This diversion barrage rises the water to the level in a river, and thus diverts the water to the canal. Uh, this is called the direct irrigation. Generally, the direct irrigation scheme is of smaller magnitude, where because we do not have to store the water, so it is of the small magnitude. We don't need water to be stored, and if we need to store the water and use it, then that must be of the large scale. So the direct irrigation, which is the river canal irrigation, is not of the large magnitude, it is of the small magnitude, because there are no rigid controls over the supplies. Only one or two main canals may take off directly from the river. And cross drainage works are constructed wherever natural drains or distributary means across the canal. In bigger scheme, if there is any, there may be branch canal taking off from the main canal. Otherwise, there is no such need. This is the storage. irrigation, we call it tank irrigation or the reservoir irrigation. In a storage irrigation system, solid barrier such as a dam or a storage weir is constructed across the river, and water is stored in reservoir or lake or tank, whatever, and depending upon the water requirement of the crops, or the hydroelectric power generation requirements, and upon the also depending upon the availability of water in the river, then the volume of storage is decided. How much water is to be stored is depending upon the requirement of power generation and requirement of the crop. So storage irrigation schemes comparatively of a big, bigger magnitude, and because it involves much more expenditure than direct irrigation scheme, because and water is to be stored and then it is to be uh, um, you know taken off. One or two main canals take off from a reservoir. Due to formation of reservoirs, some land property may be submerged to the upstream of the dam. The network of canal system convey water to the agricultural fields through various regulatory works, cross drainage works, or uh, the that the aqueducts and siphon passages, canal siphons. These all are required. The cross canals too.